inflation is a very serious subject. You can argue it's the way democracies die. When democracy dies in Latin America, inflation is a big part of it. So it's a huge danger once you've got a populace that learns it can vote itself money. If you overdo it too much, you ruin your civilization a lot. And so, of course, it's a big, long-range danger. If you look at the Roman Republic, and even after they went to an empire with an absolute ruler, they inflated the currency steadily for hundreds of years, and eventually the whole damn Roman Empire collapsed. So it's the biggest long-range danger we have, probably, apart from nuclear war.
Is it something investors need to be worried about, specifically when it comes to growth stocks right now?
Well, I think the safe assumption for an investor is that over the next 100 years, the currency is going to zero. That's my working hypothesis.
Wow. Well, that'll be a different type of environment, won't it?
A very dangerous environment.
And what about the Federal Reserve?
What brought in Hitler was the combination of the Weimar inflation, where they utterly destroyed the savings of the middle class in Germany, followed by the Great Depression. It was a 1-2 punch. And Hitler came in, crazy demagogue, with 40% of the votes, and pretty soon we had a dictator hell-bent for world war. So the history is not pleasant. And Germany was a very advanced and civilized nation, the Germany that Hitler took over. I always say that the interesting thing about that was little Albert Einstein, a little Jewish boy, got his entire primary education with the insistence of the Catholic Church in Germany. Now that is a very civilized nation. So if you let your nation deteriorate too much, what you get is a Hitler. We've proved it.
Going back to inflation specifically, though, Charlie, do you think the Federal Reserve is doing the right thing now or not?
Well, of course, in a modern democracy in the age of Keynes, you're going to get big government reaction. The reaction this time was bigger than it's ever been before in the history of the United States. They just threw money at the problem. And they were probably right to fear what was going to happen and to be quite liberal in throwing money at it, but they probably overdid it a little. They threw so much money so fast that it's hard for the restaurants to get people to do the work. But I don't criticize it. It's hard to make these decisions under pressure.
How concerned are you about Russia and Ukraine right now?
Well, of course, nobody likes it. No, I don't. Of course, I don't like it.
But is it a big concern?
Does anybody like the trouble with? I don't think Russia likes it. I don't think it's good for anybody.
How do you see it playing out? How concerned should we be about it, though?
Well, there's room for optimism and there's room for pessimism. I don't have any magic ball that I can look into and tell you what's going to happen in Russia or Ukraine.
Shifting gears, Charlie, I want to ask you about cryptocurrency, which you have been very negative about, calling it rat poison, and you hated the success of Bitcoin. But are you surprised that it's gotten even more mainstream since then?
Well, I'm not survived if you stop to think about it, it's an ideal currency if you want to commit extortion or kidnapping or have a protection racket or something. Why should a civilized government want an ideal, untraceable technology to come into the payment system run by a bunch of people who want to get rich quick for doing very little for civilization? Of course I hate it. I don't think it's good that our country is going crazy over Bitcoin and its ilk. I think the communist Chinese were wiser than we were. They just banned it.
Any predictions on what's going to happen with crypto in the United States?
No. You let a bad genie out of a bottle, God knows what happens. I think it was a huge mistake to allow it at all. And the truth of the matter is our regulatory establishment, when they quit the government, they go out into this heavily promotional capitalism. And so it's very hard to get the government to make good, wise decisions about something like Bitcoin.
Charlie, last year, Robinhood, the new broker-dealer, issued a statement saying people are tired of the Warren Buffetts and Charlie Mungers of the world acting like they are the only oracles of investing. What's your response to that, and where do you stand on day trading apps like Robinhood?
Well, I think if I were the benign dictator of the world, I would make it unfeasible to make short-term gains in securities. Because we now mix up a legitimate activity, capital raising for enterprises that need money to do their capitalistic function, with a gambling casino where people come in and gamble. And those two functions, when they're mixed, as they are in a stock market or Bitcoin, create a speculative mess and a speculative orgy. And it's dangerous for the republic. It isn't good to have a lot of people trying to get easy money, for sure, just from gambling. And the people that are preying on them, the salesmen and the market makers, they're not the most admirable people either. So, no, I don't like it at all. As I say, most old men don't, of course. And a lot of people think, well, and just Warren and Charlie don't understand it. Well, I think we do understand it, and we know it isn't good for our republic, and we can't do much about it, so we spend our time on the matters we can do something about.
Fair enough, Charlie.
There wouldn't be any Bitcoin.
Fair enough, Charlie. Right. The wealth of the world's 10 richest people, Charlie, doubled from 700 billion to 1.5 trillion during the pandemic. Is that something to be concerned about? Should the ultra rich pay more taxes? And even if you're okay with it, aren't you concerned about the widening gap between the rich and poor?
Well, of course, it creates tension. And the reason it creates tension is that people they're not really motivated by greed. They're motivated by envy. It's the nature of our species that we look around us at other people and are envious of them if they have more than we do. And that envy has always been a big problem. That's the reason the laws of Moses said you couldn't envy the neighbor's wife, you couldn't envy the neighbor's land, you couldn't even envy your neighbor's donkey, which wasn't much of a farm animal, by the way. And the old Jews were having trouble with envy, and we're still having it. And so, of course, it'll never go away as long as you have